just go observe. That's how people know that you know what we do, because you've taken the time to just go stand there and watch, learn what we do, get to know us, get to know our department. And even if you don't have that background in the OR, at least you put some time in to learn what we do, learn who we are. And that helps build that relationship too.
Infection stops where information starts. Welcome to the Transmission Control Podcast, where knowledge is your strongest defense. Broadcasting from the front lines of healthcare, we dive into the strategies, science, and stories shaping infection prevention today. Each episode, we connect you with experts on real-world insights to help you stop the spread of healthcare-associated infections, protect patients, and strengthen your practices as an infection prevention and public health expert. When the right information reaches the right people, lives are saved.
Hello and welcome to the Transmission Control Podcast. My name is Garrett Hollenbeek. Jill Holdsworth and I today are going to be talking with the host of our sister podcast, First Case, Melanie Perry, about how IP can build relationships and form lasting change with the operating room. We'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsors.
Brought to you from the studios of Healthcare HQ, let's get into it. This is Transmission Control.
Hello and welcome to the Transmission Control Podcast. My name is Garrett Hollenbeek, Editor-in-Chief of Transmission Control, and I'm joined today by our host, Jill Holdsworth. How are you, Jill?
Hey, doing great, Garrett. How are you doing?
I'm good, and I'm happy to have a fellow podcaster and host of one of our sister brands on Transmission Control as a guest today, Melanie Perry. Melanie, how are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me. It's fun to have the tables turned and be on the other side of the mic, so to speak.
That's right. Yeah. And so, Melanie, for those of us out there that don't know you or aren't familiar with your work on First Case and in the OR, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, for sure. I am an OR nurse. I have been in the operating room since 2011, been a nurse since 2002. I'd like to say that means I started my career when I was 10, but unfortunately that's really not the case. But anyway, that's okay.
We know you were 10.
Yes, I was really just 10 when I became a nurse. Yes. The new Doogie Howser, right? Anyway, but I've been a nurse for quite a while. I did a lot of different specialties due to the fact that my husband was in the military. And so early in my career, we moved around, did different things, got into pain management when we were living in Texas. And through pain management actually got me into the operating room. And I walked into an OR. And after I got over the initial shock of walking into an OR, I was like, oh, I love this. This is where I'm going to be. And so I've been in the OR ever since. And one of the things that I guess got me connected to First Case was that I also, because of the OR, how new and different it was, I ended up starting a blog to talk about what it was like to be in the OR. And then through that, we ended up getting First Case going. And that's what we do. We talk about the OR, what it's like, and the ways that we can make it better.
I love that. That's powerful. And I think it's really cool to hear that you can speak from a place of like, hey, this is all new to me, and I'm going to write about my experience and kind of the early days and the pitfalls. And that was one of the reasons we wanted to have you on the podcast today, because this first season is all about IP orientation and that new infection prevention journey. And one of the most intimidating areas of the hospital to round in or to even step foot in is the operating room.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. We can be a little tough.
I think it's tough too, because you've got surgeons, you've got, nurses, scrub techs, you got all these people, and they're all running around doing things really fast, and they seem like they're doing really important stuff, and you always just feel like you're in the way when we're just, trying to make sure things are done right and see how they're scrubbing their hands, and are they wearing their scrub a tire, right? And it just always feels like we're in the way and not doing as important work as all of you are in the OR.
Yeah, I can understand that feeling. It does feel like you're in the way. I mean, just to be honest, right? We're running around. We're like, who is this person and why are they watching me? And do they even know what we're supposed to be doing anyway? And so it does feed, I think, a lot of that tension because I think we're both needing the same thing.
And we can feel that everybody knows that we're watching. You can feel that tension where everybody's kind of like giving you the side eye, like, who is this person? They're dressed like me because we're all dressed the same, but
they look out of place.
Yeah.
They look out of place and they don't know why they're in here or what they're supposed to do. And we can tell.
You can feel that we're not one of you.
Yeah, right.
That's a very real feeling when you step into the OR. And even if you've been in there or, had some experience or even a lot of experience, as we were putting together the kind of concept for the episode today, I don't know if either of you seen Parks and Rec, that sitcom from a few years ago. And, the main guy goes into the Home Depot or the hardware store and he walks past the guy and says, I know more than you. Don't talk to me about what, and that's kind of what it feels like as an IP, because really everybody in the room likely knows more than you about aseptic technique, sterile technique, and how to keep patients safe, because that's what everything's driven towards in the OR. So to kick it off, Melanie, when that's the culture already in the operating room, how can IP contribute well to that?
That's a great question. And I think that's a really good place to start the conversation, because I think the best way that IP can contribute is to get to know us, get into the OR and get to know the people that are there, build those relationships and actually have connections within the OR before you show up with a clipboard. Because as soon as you show up with clipboard in hand and judgment dripping off your face, we're not going to be friends. But if we can get to know you as people and as our peers and coworkers and fellow professionals, because that's the truth. We are professionals doing different parts of the job, but each of our job is geared towards patient safety and optimal patient outcomes. So then how do we work together to make that happen? And I think it starts really at the relationship level. Get to know your department, get to know the people, and then do your audits, do the things you need to do. And maybe if you could do that audit without a clipboard in hand, that would be glorious. But let's not start with the clipboard. Let's start with a relationship.
So here's an honest question for you, Melanie, because it's easy to go into a nursing unit, chat with the nurses when they come out of a patient room. I feel like it's not as easy when you go into the OR because, like I said, everybody's running around. They're always doing things. They're literally performing surgery. So you can't just be like, hey, do you guys want to
hang out?
Chit chat right now and have some real talk while you're cutting open this patient? So what do you think is the best strategy for someone in an IP or really anybody to start forming those relationships in an environment like the OR where it's not as easy and there might not be as much downtime where you just run into people?
For sure. I really think the best approach is going to be understanding that most ORs have a daily huddle morning meeting. If they don't have that, they might have a weekly staff meeting, or maybe it's monthly. I don't know. I can't speak to what every single OR does, but I've been in ORs that did all of those things. There was a big monthly meeting or a weekly meeting or a daily huddle. That's a perfect time to get into the OR and introduce yourself and just tell them who you are. Let them ask you questions. Let them find out about you. Let them know your background. What experience? I mean, I'm not saying let's do a major interview with you in the morning meeting so everybody knows how good you are. But just like the simple introducing yourself, letting them know who you are and that you're there to support them and be part of their team, not just to show up and pass judgments. But that's a great way to get to know people. And you can in that morning meeting because surgery hadn't started yet. And we're all there because we have to be.
I like that. I think that's a really great challenge to go out to newer IPs is go and participate in a non-audit moment. And then even to go past that. And I love the idea of a clipboard-free audit. One, because you don't know what's on your clipboard that you're taking into every room in the hospital.
Yeah.
But, just go in with your eyes open. So when we start to build those relationships, what are some do's and don'ts when the IP is actually in the operating room?
Please don't contaminate my back table. Just don't touch it, okay? I've had people come in to do audits, and it's not just IP. I've even had other departments who needed to watch different things. Even maintenance has had to put on bunny suits and come in before. Please understand the basics of the sterile field, what you can touch and what you can't. And before you just invite yourself into an operating room that's doing a case, call in and speak to the circulator or get the director to come let the circulator know, hey, this is Jill from infection prevention. She needs to watch X, Y, and Z. Is it okay if she comes in? That way, our territory, I guess, for lack of a better word, I hate to say we're territorial, but we get really territorial about our patient on the table and who is coming in that room. And so if we can start with just some basic formalities of just being respectful to the people in that room. Here's who they are. Here's why they're coming in. Can they come in? Or, hey, they're going to be here for your next case. If the IP is going to be in there for the next case, then kind of get in there before, the patient rolls in or, at a good time, or even better yet, ask the circulator, when would be a good time for me to come in? When would be best? And where would you like me to stand? Or here's what I need to watch. So where should I be? We're a team. Let's talk about it and let's communicate and see what's going to work best. And just don't touch anything blue. That's just your go-to guideline.
Yeah.
I want to kind of step back because a lot of newer IPs or IPs that just have never observed in the OR before, they have so many questions about all of those things that you just said. and so I think a couple of those things are so good to just kind of reiterate and just talk about, some IPs, they don't know how close they are allowed to be to the sterile field. And so they can't get offended if somebody says, you're too close. You gotta back up. It's not that you're in trouble or somebody's trying to be mean. They don't want you nearby. It's a rule. There's not a whole lot of training out there for IPs. There's one course on the APIC site that talks about here's what you do when you observe a case. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth in kind of this educational realm of all those things that you just said. What's proper etiquette for an IP that's going in to observe? And I think the most awkward thing is, where do you stand? What do you do? You always feel in the way, and then you stand here, and then somebody needs to get behind you. And so, what do you do? What do you sit? Do you stand? Do you accept the chair that somebody offers you?
Or are they going to judge me if I sit down? Is that allowed?
So
is it not
awkward?
My gosh, you can sit down. I don't speak for the world, but I speak for me. I am not going to judge you if you sit down. Some surgeries can be long. It depends on how long you're going to be there, and you might get lightheaded. So please sit down, don't pass out.
For those IPs who have not been in an OR before, don't underestimate how sore your body will be after you stand there for a long period of time watching a surgery, because our bodies aren't used to standing there all day long like someone who works in the OR every day. And I always feel oh my gosh, I need to go do yoga or Pilates or something for 50 hours a day after I watch an OR case, because my whole body hurts. And I'm how do y'all do this every day? And they're well, we're used to it. And
we just walk around constantly exhausted, I've decided. But, we get used to it.
I love it. And you hit on something that's really good. And in my experience, that circulator is like your buddy. So for people who are not as familiar with OR, who is the circulator? What's their role? And how can we, be good friends with them while we're doing an observation?
Absolutely. So the circulator is that nurse that is in the surgical case who is not in sterile gowns and gloves and everything else. They are the unsterile person in the room. So a lot of times you're going to find them either running around like a chicken with their head cut off because you're trying to get everything in the world, and in that moment they probably don't have time to answer your question about where they could stand. But that's one reason it's also a really good idea to talk to them ahead of time or find out, what's going to be good. But also, the circulator is the one that's in charge of documentation. We've got to document everything that goes on, including all of the people that are in our room. So we got to know who you are anyway, because we got to put you in the case when we chart it. And so you might find the circulator at a charting station, at a computer on wheels, or at a desk. You might find them coming back in from the supply room with a handful of supplies and whatnot, but they are that nurse that is not in sterile scrub stuff. And they're just in the regular scrubs. They're in the room to be the unsterile person, because the people that are scrubbed in obviously can't break scrub constantly every time they need something. So that is who that circulator is. And I think, Jill, also, you hit on a great point, and so did you, Garrett. just go observe. That's how people know that what we do, because you've taken the time to just go stand there and watch, learn what we do, get to know us, get to know our department. And even if you don't have that background in the OR, at least you put some time in to learn what we do, learn who we are. And that helps build that relationship too.
And ask questions. I can remember some of the first cases that I ever watched. And if you don't ask questions, of course, you're never going to learn. But there are a lot of surgeons that like to have people come watch because they can really flex their muscles and talk about what they're doing and
flex their ego.
Yeah. And they don't get to explain everything they're doing to the people that they work with every day because it's like they don't care. But if you're in there and you want to know, like sometimes I'll ask the surgeon, do you mind like explaining throughout the case, like what you're doing? And they do like that.
Oh yeah, they do.
Mm-hmm. They don't get to do that every day.
Yeah, we get tired of listening to them. We don't want to hear them talk anymore. Right? But a new person to listen to them, heck yeah. And
it's fascinating. And they'll probably be like, you could come over here and watch. I've stood over like at the back of the head before and watched. And it's if you kind of open yourself up and be vulnerable to say, I want to learn, I don't know, please help me, then
they might even let you scrub in so that you can get right up next to the sterile field and watch. It kind of depends on the type of surgery and the patient and what we're doing. But I've had more than one occasion where people were just observing and wanting to learn, and what better place to learn than right up at the sterile field. So, there's opportunity there too if you want that and you seek it out and ask for it.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And that's a good point that you hit on too, is kind of knowing the game plan and the workflow of the room. Jill mentioned the APIC chapter. I know there's some great chapters in the AORN. We always want to kind of lift up the standard and make sure that's where people are going. The AORN standard has great chapters on how IP can function in the operating room. What are some things that IP should be looking for in the OR? What are some things that are maybe common gaps or breaks in technique that IP can be aware of that may impact the patient?
One that I had not experienced until I got to my current facility, and so I'm telling on my current facility, but it's something that needs to be fixed, and I've told them this, so it's not like it's anything new. But there is a disconnect between doing a morning scrub and using surgical scrub when you scrub in. And yes, there are certain surgical scrubs that can replace most of your morning scrub, except for like cleaning under your nails.
Like a waterless scrub? Is that what you're talking about?
The waterless scrub. We don't have that particular waterless scrub that can replace a morning scrub. So you need to do your morning scrub when you scrub in, the actual soap and water and scrub brush, clean out under your nails, do all that stuff. And then once you've done that, then you can certainly use that waterless scrub when you scrub in for your cases until you've, gone to the bathroom, eaten lunch, done other things, then you should really scrub and wash your hands again. But we have a hard time at my facility getting our scrubs to just do the actual scrub brush wash in the morning. The surgical scrub is great, but you've got to start with a clean face. And so that's one thing to watch out for. And, if you're not there early in the morning, you're not going to see it because our scrubs are there at 6:00 in the morning. They need to be washing their hands. Actually, the entire staff does. If you really want to just really be on par with everything, everybody should be doing a morning scrub just to start out clean. Beyond that, though, paying attention to things like scrubs. Are we wearing hospital laundered scrubs? Are we wearing home laundered scrubs? And if we're wearing home laundered scrubs, are we following all the rules for actually laundering those scrubs or cleanliness? But then hospital laundered scrubs, are you actually wearing them in from home, or are you changing your clothes when you get here? that's a pet peeve of mine because I'm a rule follower. So it's like, if the rule is this, then this is what we're going to do. And it's gross too. Why are you going to wear your scrubs at home and then come in and then just wear them from your house if you have the option to actually change your clothes and wear clean clothes while you're here? I know Jill and I talked about this on the first case podcast. I highly encourage you to go listen to that because I got all on my soapbox about all sorts of things.
Go listen to that next.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just one of those things. Like we have hospital laundered scrubs. If that's an option, then let's wear clean clothes when we work on our patient, because I don't want your house germs falling into my parent who's cut open on the table when you wear dirty scrubs, and then also like paying attention when you're draping, when you are working out off of the sterile field, like where is your actual zone of sterility, right? Like, are we paying attention to those zones? And a lot of times scrubs that are scrubbed in, they want to sit down while they wait on the surgeon. Well, we're standing up for the surgery. You don't get to sit down because now you've messed up that rectangle, I guess, of your safe sterile zone. Or covering back tables. Well, if the case is open and then we're not going to go for a while and we cover our back table, have you done it properly or have you done it incorrectly? And are you going to contaminate it when you take that drape off? I know I'm going on and on because I could have a whole list, but I will clarify on that one. I will clarify on that one. Yeah. If you cover your back table, you absolutely can cover your back table, and a back table can be covered and then the room is okay to be left, until you're like, okay, maybe we should break this down and start over. But there's not actually a time limit on it. It's more like event related. But if you cover your back table and you're going to use 3/4 sheets, you need to use 2. And they need to be met in the middle so that you can pull them off from each side so that drape never touches from the outside of the table coming across again and contaminating as it goes over.
And ARN has a very good diagram of this because I've had to look it up many times. Because you're right. If you are covering your back table, particles, whatever, are falling down on whatever you're covering it with. So if you just kind of like pull it off,
whip it off,
like a bed sheet or something, then you've just interrupted all of the air and the particles and dust and whatever has settled on that. So ARN has the exact diagram showing you how to do it safely. Because if you are going to do it, you're right, you have to do it correctly. And I know there's all kinds of products out there trying to claim that they're better, but no, you don't need fancy products. You just have to do it right.
You just need to do it right. And that's in thinking about, particulates and things that have settled. You don't want to disrupt everything while you pull it off. So you're not going to whip it off like Houdini pulling a drape out from under a tablecloth. But also, that 3/4 sheet has draped over the sides of your table. Your back table is only sterile to the edges. Everything falling off is considered unsterile. So if I take that 3/4 sheet just on one end and just pull it across to the other end of the table, then I have drug that into the drape that was on the side all the way over all of my instruments and pulled it off. And now I've contaminated the whole thing because on that side, even though that's a blue drape on the side, that's not considered sterile. The top is. So understanding the limits of what we say is sterile, where we say sterility ends and where we say contamination would begin, and how we are looking at our back tables. And that, honestly, the whole covering your back table thing is a huge point of contention and of concern because people just don't think about it all the time, and they don't necessarily understand how to do it right. They want to do it right, but they don't know all the time how to do it right. So teaching and paying attention and knowing yourself what the right way is to do. So when you see those back tables covered, because of course we want them covered. We don't want our room sitting open with just tables just sitting there for hours on end. But we got to cover it correctly and we got to remove that cover correctly.
Well, I think what you said about where the sterile field is really the kind of root of what people don't understand. And where does the sterile field end? And once you kind of drop below that sterile field, it's not sterile anymore. So one of the things that kind of drives me nuts too is people that use a stool, like they step up on the stool and then they go down and up and down and up and down. So they're basically like, there's a part of their body that's kind of going up and down. But the same thing with the back table. If people truly understood where was sterile, where was not sterile, they would get it. And so I just don't think they get it. And I don't know how to fix that.
I think it is a constant re-education and reminding and pointing out, especially in the moment. If you see it, and it has to be approached not from a "ha, I caught you, you're wrong" kind of approach, because people don't like that and they don't respond well to it. What people respond well to is understanding why. Why is this the right way? And here is the requirement behind it, or the guideline behind it, or the data and documentation behind it. This is not my idea. This is not some rule I came up with. This is not data from 30 years ago that we're following, but this is the current guideline, the current information, and this is why. It's kind of like fighting against the idea that a room can only be open for 2 hours and then it has to be broken down. That's not current guideline anymore. It's event related. And how do we protect our instruments when our room is open for longer than 2 hours and we're waiting on, maybe some blood work or maybe something that we're waiting on before we can go? it's covering that back table. But a lot of places you'll run into, it's going to be open 2 hours. We got to break it all down. No, we can cover it. And then depending on the time limit, we might say, I think I'd rather have a new setup, but that's not timeline specific. That is more event specific and our best judgment saying what we should do and the surgeon dictating sometimes some of that too. But it really just goes back to education and using the guidelines and the data to really support that and where that education comes from. Does it come from IP? Does it come from OR directors? Does it come maybe in collaboration between the two, providing joint education? That's really where you hit gold, because you've got both departments saying, hey, we both agree on this. We know this is right, and we're going to show you or teach you or whatever.
And I like that approach too, because sometimes there's a temptation to fixate on the procedure. When you're an IP, like watching an OR, we're not going to know if they did the cabbage right or whatever, the procedure.
No.
Like that's so above our head.
Right. That's not my pay grade. I don't know that.
Exactly. But those general principles of infection prevention, know what's clean, know what's dirty, know what's sterile, and those are universal principles. How is the hand hygiene supposed to be done? Was it done correctly? And so I like that framework of go in to the OR as an IP and an extra set of eyes to say, hey, I noticed this. Can you help me learn if that's the right way or if there's a better way? Is that current practice? And I love that nod to, we may have kind of outdated or superstitious practices that may not be up to where our IP expectations are. So one of the challenges that I think IP faces is because surgical site infections are, such a big part of our KPIs. I see this a lot, and I don't know that it's the best way, but there will be a spike in surgical site infections, and they'll say, well, you need to go observe in the OR. And the back of my head thought that I never voice in meetings is, I don't know that that's the right place to start.
It's not. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, no, but it's probably
and that's
not.
What I want to, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, okay, so let's think about it. Okay, obviously, in surgery, we have the patient cut open, and their internal organs are exposed to the outside environment, and there are a whole host of risks, obviously, associated with that. And we also do a lot within preoperatively, operatively, and postoperatively to combat those risks, whether it's with our antibiotic protocols and our maybe carb loading and other things that we do for patients ahead of time to give them the energy they need to start healing. And there's a lot we can do to mitigate the risks that they experience in surgery. And then obviously their wound is closed in a sterile manner. Their dressings are applied sterilely. All of these things that we are doing to make sure that that wound is covered appropriately and protected. Once they go off into the wild blue yonder, you have no idea what they're doing to their dressing, to their wound, what they're putting on it, and so I'm not saying that all of our patients have some evil intent to get their wounds infected, but after they leave the OR, how are they taking care of their wounds? Are they cleaning them? Are they keeping them covered? Are they doing the things that they're supposed to do? Are they doing it correctly? A good example of this, actually, when I went to Honduras, I was in Honduras for a week doing medical missions there, and I had a phenomenal time. But one of the things I learned while I was there was that the wound or dressing care for those patients is vastly different than what we have for our patients. Like our patients, say they're doing a knee scope, they might have dressing, port site dressings, but they're going to change them in a couple days, and we're going to keep that dressing clean and tank it off. Not in Honduras. That dressing's going to stay on for 3 weeks straight. And you think, oh, wow, why? It's because of the water there. And the water there has germs that can everything. And it actually is worse for the patient using that water to clean their wound than it would be to just leave the dressing on. So it's 2 to 3 weeks that those dressings stay on untouched. That way it protects the patient from exposure to particulates, pathogens, whatever, that are in the water that they would then risk an infection. So extreme example, but you think about it, what is in the patient's home environment? What is in their environment, or what is maybe lacking in their education and understanding so that they think that they're doing okay, but they're not taking care of their wound correctly? How many times do you see E. coli in a wound that there's no reason E. coli should be anywhere near that wound, And so examples like that where you think, I don't think it was the OR that caused this problem, but how do you track the social or the home life type care of these wounds to really say, when it's easier to point out, oh, well, y'all flashed it. Oh, we don't flash anymore. Sorry. Y'all did IUSS on an instrument, or y'all did this, or y'all did that. And so maybe this was why. And I'm like, but was it? So I can see you got to find the blame, or you got to look for a source somewhere. And so they always start where the surgery started. But
I think there's so much to look at in the OR. And so that's kind of the easy answer for other people to tell us. Like, well, just go observe what's happening at the patient, observe the skin prep, observe the closure. There's so many things that, because for SSIs, it's so hard to do a chart review and to say, well, figured it out by the chart review, because the op notes are usually pretty good in terms of everything is perfectly there. You're not going to find what happened with your SSI from the op note. So then it's like you're on a scavenger hunt to try and figure out what could have happened, but you're probably never going to find what exactly happened, but you might find some things that you can improve on. So SSIs are probably the most frustrating for me in terms of figuring out how to improve and say, oh yeah, we figured it out, because the people that we report to don't always understand that. Like, yeah, we figured out what we're going to do. We all we can do is say, we found some things to improve on, and we're going to do that.
Yeah. And it's important too, because to see how this connects to that OR IP relationship, because the OR is always the first one that gets blamed. And so we feel very judged anytime that y'all are, I say y'all, that sounds very us versus, us versus y'all, right? But it's like the first thing IP is looking for is, well, what did you do wrong? How did you mess up? Well, did we? But we are the first place that they go when they're hunting for the cause of that, surgical site infection. On the one hand, it makes sense. We're the ones who cut the people open. But on the other hand, it's like there's a whole host of variables that we have no control over. So, but we're the first people that they come hunting to find out, what happened.
And I think that's a really fair point, Melanie, because it probably feels like that's what's happening. But we've probably already gone to SPD and pre-op and PACU. And we probably already, if we haven't, maybe you are the first one, but we're going there next. Yeah. But it doesn't matter, because and this is so important for IPs to understand, because what is perceived by the OR is, we're coming after you.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're our target, and we're blaming you. So it doesn't matter if we think it was whatever the pre-op interventions are. The OR thinks we're blaming them no matter what happened. But the OR is just one stop on our scavenger hunt to figure out what happened. So it's all in the approach and how you talk to people about it, and make it seem more like a partnership. Like, we're really just trying to fact find. We're not blaming. We're trying to understand, instead of, well, what'd you all do wrong?
Yeah. But I've been asked that before. Like, how did you screw up? I'm like, well, wait a minute. Because I was the manager of an OR in Fort Worth, Texas for a couple of years. And a lot of my interactions with infection prevention were that kind of approach. How did they mess up this time? I'm
That's
like,
unfortunate. I'm sorry.
How do you know that we did?
Yeah. And I think that goes to the recommendation piece of it too, is if we had $1 to spend on better skin prep, or we had $1 to spend on patient education about not letting your dog sleep in your bed after you had your knee replaced.
Yeah, maybe don't let them lick your wound.
Where should we place that dollar?
Oh.
Let's wish for $2 and we can do both. But
yeah, exactly.
So Melanie, as we close out today, can you give us one or two really good go-and-dos for our IPs listening, things that they can take and help build that relationship with the OR?
Absolutely. Number one, don't be afraid of us. I know that we're scary and we seem very tense, and we are. We're stressed out constantly, but we love what we do. And a lot of our stress and tension is driven by the fact that we want to make sure that our patients have a good surgical outcome and a safe outcome. And that's what's driving infection prevention too. So we have the same motivator and the same goal. So don't be afraid of us. And just don't be afraid also to just come in, introduce yourself, build that relationship with the OR manager, the OR director, charge nurse, whoever it is that you can interact with, so that when you do need to come down and audit, or you do need to watch, you can just call the person and be like, hey, is there a room I can go into for Dr. Smith? I need to watch this or that. And they don't immediately jump to, oh, they think we did something wrong, but you've had that relationship that's already been built. And you can also build that by just asking to come observe. Just come watch what we do, especially, and I will warn you, the OR finds out real quick if the person in infection prevention does not have OR experience. And then suddenly we're like, nope, done by. So we don't want that. But everybody doesn't come from the same background, but that doesn't mean you can't take the time to learn about our department. And you learn by being present, by being in, by watching, observing. And yes, it's going to take time. Yes, you're going to stand up for a long time, and our cases are long, and we're different and weird. But you can learn a lot just by being a fly on the wall and seeing what we do. And the more you learn, the more, I guess, maybe respect there will be about you understanding us when you're coming to us, so that we can have that mutual understanding of an issue that we need to fix.
I love it. That's phenomenal advice. And thank you, Melanie, for your insights. Thank you for your advocacy for patient safety and working with a couple of IPs. It's great.
Yeah, I loved it. This was great.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll see you.
Absolutely. All right.
Well, that was so much fun. I just love Melanie's energy, and I love anytime I get to talk to her in general, but that was an awesome episode. And just a couple things that I love that she said, that I actually say this a lot too: don't take your clipboard around when you're an IP. So that kind of really stuck with me, and it's so hard not to, because I know as IPs we're like, what are we going to write on? But sometimes I've even put my hands up when I ran and say, look, I don't even have anything to write on. I'm just here to observe. I'm just here to learn. And people do feel less threatened when you come and you're literally not taking notes. You're not auditing. You can take pictures on your phone or make yourself text yourself. That's what I do end up doing. But such a great point. And I love to make the point that she said of just go observe, go watch, go ask questions. No matter what department you're thinking about, that is always the best strategy to form some relationships. Just keep going and asking questions, be vulnerable. I know these have been kind of themes in all of our episodes this season. As new or seasoned IPs, just go and open yourself up to learning new things.
That's 100% true. And I keep writing down relationship building as we go and, go through these episodes. If you're an IP who was listening to the episode to find out how do I round in the OR, there were some great takeaways on like what to look for with a sterile field, what to look for with draping. If you were an IP listening to that episode to find out how do I make my interactions with the OR better, you came away with a ton of stuff about how to really build that relationship and make it successful, not just for, this month or this week, but long-term successful relationship with OR. So Melanie's always great to have on as a guest. And definitely, if you haven't listened to her podcast, Jill's got a few episodes on there as well. Some great collaboration, but that's the First Case podcast. So check that out as well. And remember, infection stops where information starts.
Thanks for tuning in to the Transmission Control Podcast, where infection stops because information starts. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and share this episode with your team. Until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant, and keep transmission under control.